All right, well, we will go ahead and get started. My name is Carolyn Everidge. I am the Health and Human Sciences Educator for Purdue Extension in Huntington County. And in honor of World Suicide Prevention Awareness Day, which is today, we're hosting this panel where we have some individuals who are in recovery as well as individuals who work with individuals in recovery. So I'm going to introduce our panelists and then we're going to get right into some questions. The chat box is enabled, so if you have questions for the panelists specifically or questions in general, feel free to pop those in there anytime throughout today's chat. So I will start with Asha Dis. Asha is a certified addiction peer recovery coach who is currently employed with the Jay County Drug Prevention Coalition. Asha is also a peer mentor with Project Me. She received her Bachelor of Science degree in Human Service Management with a minor in psychology. Asha is a person in long-term recovery and a survivor of multiple suicide attempts. Our next panelist is James Fridge Everidge. While in the Army National Guard, Fridge was a tow missile Mark 19 and 50 cal gunner. In his professional life, Fridge is an apprentice with the Plumbers and Steamfitters Local 166 out of Fort Wayne. He has been involved with Warrior Breed MC for the last 4 years. Warrior Breed MC's mission is helping veterans with PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. They also assist veterans with bills, rent, appliances, tiny homes, food, and much more. Warrior Breed's MC mission focus of veterans with PTSD is due to the 22 veterans that take their own lives each day. Traumatic brain injuries are another factor in the high rate of death by suicide among veterans. Warrior Breed MC is here to help them because they understand where they have been and what they are going through. 22 a day till none. Our next panelist is Orion McCormick. Orion currently works at the United Way of Huntington County as the Donor Development Coordinator. He is also the facilitator of Safe Huntington, an LGBTI support group for Huntington County. He has a very long and difficult relationship with depression and suicidal ideations. He understands firsthand the struggles that those facing suicidal thoughts go through. He is passionate about reducing the stigma around mental health, depression, and suicide, and is honored to be on this panel today. Our last but certainly not least panelist is Angela Sorg. Angela attended Hanover College, where she earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology. Immediately following, Angela attended the University of St. Francis and graduated with a Master of Science degree in mental health counseling and a second Master of Science degree in school counseling. After earning her license in mental health counseling and teacher's license in school services, Angela began her career as a child, adolescent, and family therapist, focusing on trauma, abuse, substance abuse, and severe mental disorders. Angela has worked both in the mental health counseling field and served as a school guidance counselor in middle and high schools. Currently, Angela is employed by Purdue University and serves as the Health and Human Sciences Educator for DeKalb County, where she provides research-based information to her local community and across the state. Angela is also proud to be part of Purdue Extension's Mental Health First Aid, Co-Parenting, and Farm Stress teams. So thank you to all of our panelists who are here today. We're going to go ahead and get started with our questions, and feel free to answer them in any order among you is fine. So our first question is really just, what does mental health mean to you or to your family or to the individuals that you work with?
Well, what I feel like mental health means to me is just making sure to care for like our emotional well-being. So just being mindful of our thoughts and how those thoughts can manifest into actions, and just remaining very cognizant of that.
To me, in the veteran world, mental health means being able to deal with things when you come home from combat situations, whether it be being able to reacclimate yourself into the civilian world, whether it be able to function daily for you and your family, and for just your family is the big one. being able to be there and support them and give them everything that they need, whether it be mentally, physically, or what it is. So.
For me, mental health pretty much runs parallel to what I think of as physical health. I need to take care of myself in order for either a more severe something to happen. I'm pretty simple. So mental health is my ability to live, laugh, love, and play. And if one of those 4 things are affected, then I know that something is up and I need to pay attention to it.
Mental health for me is, much like physical health in the sense that, whether if you're in good physical health, then you're going to be able to handle physical restraint or physical stimuli a lot better. But with mental, you have internal and external stimuli. Good mental health means you will make good decisions or better decisions when faced with that stimuli. While bad mental health, you lead to more drastic actions or improper actions over even smaller occurrences.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing that. I should have prefaced that my background is I'm a licensed social worker, so mental health is also really important to me. And it's really awesome to see how mental health, what mental health means to others, and how I can even think of it a little bit differently as well. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Some of the people on the call today may be individuals that are not experiencing a mental health crisis or do not have mental health crises in their family. They may really be looking for information about how to support others. So my next question to you is, what can we do as family members, as friends, as community members to really support individuals who are experiencing, whether it's a mental health crisis, a substance use disorder, or even having suicidal thoughts or ideation?
I think that in very simple terms, just listening to someone, just hearing someone where they're at, seeing them where they're at, and really listening to them to know, how to address whatever needs they have in that moment, and just validating whatever they're communicating to you to make them feel seen and heard.
To me, it's definitely being there, no matter if it's a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning or a phone call at 1 in the afternoon. Just always be there, listen to what their needs are and listen to them. Don't ever try to belittle them. Let them, empower them in any way that you can to help them get over whatever the situation is at hand. Always be there for them. Don't try to argue with them. Just try and listen and reason with them is a big one.
Kind of going off of that, I always tell my twin daughters that feelings aren't right or wrong, they just are. So I would reiterate the not arguing with someone's feelings. The other thing is, a lot of times it's different with physical health than mental health. If someone says to me, I have cancer, then I'm going to say, what can I do? Can I take your kids somewhere? Can I cook you food? When someone is experiencing a mental health crisis or any kind of mental health issues at all, people tend to get really scared and nervous about that, because most of us, if we're asking, we're caring people. And so we want to help care for them. And then we start feeling responsible for their outcome. And that makes us really uncomfortable and really scared a lot of times. And so, again, I would reiterate listening. And again, if it's a 1 a.m. call or 2 p.m. call, but you're never responsible for someone else's physical illness, and you're never responsible for someone else's mental illness, but you can sure help walk that path with them, whatever that looks like for you as a person.
Yes to all of the above, but kind of when looking at these questions from an LGBTI standpoint, The first thing I was really thinking about, and something that would have helped me when I was younger and struggling with this, was how people just talked about these issues and, you know, just LGBTI issues around me. You know, more than anything, with me struggling from this when I was younger, I didn't know who to approach. I know many of my friends and family would have been there and would have been available, but some of the things they said, using, you know, improper terminology around LGBT issues, or, you know, talking about crazy people or insane people, all really put me off from like ever even broaching the subject. So changing our language so that people understand that we're safe to talk to. And then also, you know, even going as far as just talking about your own issues, you know, being the one that brings it up to them first, that really changes things. I have an Apple Watch. I swear this is going somewhere. And I have a Pride watch band that I wear occasionally. And it will start conversations from complete strangers who have kids, nieces and nephews, brothers and sisters who are struggling with their sexuality, struggling with their gender identity, and they will start talking to me and opening up completely about their lives because they just see that little bit of a connection. And, you know, they ask, how can I help? And it's the smallest thing, but I've had conversations through McDonald's drive-through windows that honestly probably would have been charged like $150 an hour somewhere else.
Thank you, Orion. That's a perfect segue into our next question about any suggestions or what would have been helpful for you, or what have people told you have been helpful when talking about addiction, mental health, and suicide, when all of these things that are experiences have so much stigma attached to them. So I know you kind of hit on that a little bit, but I want to definitely allow some other thoughts and comments to come in about how we can have conversations about these topics, even when there's all of this stigma attached to it.
I think for oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'll just real quickly continue off what I was saying. I actually wrote down start with connections, because even when someone who you know, may have never gone through some of these things may think that they're being crazy. I know there's a lot of stigma around drug addictions, and then people who, you know, who have either attempted or thought about, you know, there comes into the selfishness aspect. And, you know, everyone's gone through tough times, and I think you just have to connect those tough times. And, you know, what if you weren't in the same place that you were mentally when you went through tough times? Bridge that gap through the empathy side of things.
Another good way on some suggestions and stuff, surround yourself with like-minded people, especially as like for the veteran situation. Get around a group of veterans that understand where you've been and can understand what coming home from war means, that can be there and to just listen to you and understand. Understanding is huge, because if you don't understand where a vet's been, then it's going to be very hard for you to help them. Not knowing what they've encountered, whether it be, you know, explosions, or whether it be bombs blowing up beside them, and, you know, coming home with, you know, TBIs, brain injuries and stuff, and or missing a limb. The biggest thing is just understand where they're coming from and listen. That's the best suggestions that I could offer.
I agree with that. And I like to kind of go off that too. I remember when at a different employer that I had we had a client that was coming in with severe PTSD from coming back. from war, and they asked if I would be that person's therapist because I do specialize in PTSD. And I said, absolutely not. We need a veteran therapist to be with this veteran because it's extremely specialized, even more than PTSD. It's like comparing apples and oranges. And so I agree that certain things cause, certain populations need, they're like populations. We are pack animals. Humans are pack animals, and we are around like individuals. And so making those connections is really, really important. Also, I would go off of, I'm on our farm stress team. And so going into the farming community and educating our farming community about mental health or mental illness and suicide, where it's not really talked about a whole lot. The idea of suicide, oftentimes, not just in the farming community, but in every community that I've been a part of, does see a lot of times suicide as a sign of weakness. And one of my goals is always to transform and to think of it differently, as suicide is actually a very protective factor. It's a protective barrier that someone is engaging in. Oftentimes it's a protective thing for their family. And when you're in the midst of depression, your mind can tell you lots of different things. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign that we just need some help. And so I would reiterate that it's not a sign of weakness. Growing up, I grew up in the foothills of Kentucky. So anyone who was experiencing any kind of mental illness was deemed as crazy. And I do not like that word. Anytime I hear it, I try to combat that word, because we're all people. 1 in 5 Americans have a diagnosable mental illness. So we're very much similar.
For me, with stigma, having conversations where there's a lot of stigma attached, I'd say the best way to combat those kind of conversations is to just be educated, to educate yourself with as much knowledge about, these topics as you can. And then challenge, like when you're having conversations, if there is stigma attached, ask the person what causes that thinking, or what makes you think along those lines, and start a different conversation where maybe you can develop discrepancies and help reframe that in a different way. Because a lot of times when there's stigma attached, or probably most times, it's because people don't have an understanding of what's truly going on, and so they just presumptuously insert, whatever their perceptions are from their life, and there you have it. So all addicts are junkies. It will never, ever be worth anything. And those in the LGBT, just all of the different things that people get ideas about. I think as educated people, we can combat that with just challenging those thoughts.
Thanks everyone for sharing that. I just want to recap a little bit. You all mentioned it briefly, but the language that we use is just so important. If you noticed when I said earlier, it's death by suicide or it's died by suicide. It's never, ever committed suicide. Even when we talk about people who have a mental illness or experience a substance use disorder, because people are more than whatever that circumstance or whatever that disorder is. So I really appreciate all of the things that you said, and these are some great suggestions that I hope some of the people on with us today will be able to utilize in their daily lives. So this next question for you panelists is, what are some barriers for seeking treatment, whether that's treatment that you yourself sought, or if that's individuals that you have worked with? What are some of the things that keep people from being able to seek this treatment and really enter recovery in any facet, whether that's mental health or addiction related?
Stigma, being stigmatized. just are being pinholed as someone who suffers from a mental health disorder, or you know, so I think stigma, and then just fear, like just being scared of seeking out and asking for help from someone else. It can be really scary and intimidating.
I like that stigma. That's a good one. Pride, ego, um, being not knowing exactly where to go to look is another one, especially if combat situations and stuff, not knowing who to ask and where to go, and you might go to try and seek help at the VA, and they might run you down a list of people to go through, and just finding that person with the like-mindedness that can understand what's going on is a big one. A lot of times people are like, "Oh no, I don't have a problem. It's just I just have bad days," and I think pride is a big one. So
Most of us wait until we're in the middle of a crisis in order to go get help, and it's usually by the suggestion of someone else. Sometimes it's by our own suggestion. So, you know, I always tell people, when you're in the midst of depression or anxiety or another emerging mental illness, your thought process is not always there, and your ability to if this then that. And so I don't know if you've ever tried to make an appointment at a community mental health facility or any kind of facility. It's a process. And so I think that's hard. In our farming community, I love this testimony that one of our farmers gave, and he said he was very scared. He lived in a very small town, and he knew that everyone knew his truck. And so he did not want to go to a therapist in his community because that was, in his mind, a sign of weakness, and that he was something horrible was going on, and he didn't want his family to be judged. And so he actually bordered another state, and so went to a whole nother state. Then you have insurance, and so who pays for it, and how much do they pay, and how often can you go? So there's a lot of barriers. There's not a lot of mental health clinicians. I'm a great example of burnout. That's why I'm not working in mental health therapy right now, because those of us do need time away, and then we'll get back to it. But so there's not a lot of therapists to go around, especially in rural Indiana.
When looking at barriers, you know, I'm coming at it from kind of that LGBT stance. There's a few different barriers. One that I was thinking was more like LGBT specific, but then she talked about the farmer aspect, and it's one I didn't really think about, is that, you know, awareness in small towns, medium-sized towns, of being seen and noticed, and all of that fun stigma that goes into that. But oftentimes, like, that's internal. Again, like you talked about the pride and the ego. You know, as they said, 1 in 5 have a disorder, at least diagnosable, and more and more we are seeing that people are more comfortable with talking about mental health, and going and actually getting help is really not as big of a stigma as it used to be. But again, we sometimes hold on to ideas and notions that are way outdated. On the LGBT side, more specifically, is that trying to find support that is accepting of identity or sexuality. My very first therapist was a religion-based therapist, and it did not go well. At 15 years old, like, not a great time to be dealing with that. And then also, like, you know, we talked about how long it takes for these to even get mentioned or to get addressed. I think it was like 10 to 15 years is how long it takes for a mental health problem to actually even start to be addressed. And that's because we often see that in young adults, and they are afraid to talk to their parents about it. They're afraid of what their peers may think about it. And so they don't even look at addressing it until much later down the road. And men are even worse. And that is on a majority of health issues, but mental health being one of the largest. So overall, when it comes to barriers and seeking that mental health treatment for the LGBT community, is really just trying to make sure that who they go to is going to understand their specific needs, but then also if they are youth, getting that past their parent who may not be accepting already.
Yeah, you bring up some great points, all of you, with the stigma and the pride and definitely being able to access treatment. I really appreciated the comment about if it's a youth and what kind of treatment happens, what's legally allowed to happen, what information can be shared. All of those things are definite barriers. I did want to follow up on the statement about the length of time to address mental health concerns. So the majority of mental health diagnoses or mental health illnesses typically start in youth, so 14, 15, and on average it takes 11 years to seek treatment, whether that is barriers like access to care, or if it's denial, or if it's just not even knowing that those sort of things are not what's quote normal or typical of your individual. So I just wanted to follow up with that, and these are some really great conversations we've had so far. The last formalized question I have for you all is just what do you wish people knew, whether it has to do, again, with mental health addictions or suicide? Like, what is like the most important thing you think people should know? And if you have an idea of how to help the community or help individuals know that information, we're all ears for that too.
I think one of the biggest things that everybody needs to know is that somewhere out there, there's somebody that can help you. It's not a weakness to say that you have a problem. It's not a weakness to have an addiction. It's not a weakness at all. It's you reaching out for help is probably the strongest thing that you could ever do in your life. And just find the right person that can help you. There's always somebody around, whether it be a counselor, whether it be a brother from the military, whether it be a guy you don't even know that's been to, like in the veteran side, that's been to conflict and can understand. We do a breakfast once a month, and we invite all veterans and active duty, and they have gotten to be such a close-knit group and can talk about stuff, and it's actually helped a lot of them overcome some of the PTSD issues. And just reach out. Somebody will always be out there to help you.
I always used to tell, when I was supervising brand new clinicians, and I would tell anyone this, sometimes we make it a lot harder to help someone with any kind of mental health issues than what it really is, because of what we previously talked about, listening, being there, having those breakfasts, all of those community connectiveness things that we all need. Sometimes the new clinicians would really get into their head and say, well, I need to know what this book said on this and this. And I would say, forget the book, just talk to people. That's just talk and listen. And that's a lot of, and the rest will kind of just come. So I would say, try not to make it harder than what it really is.
I think what I wish people knew is that, as it's been said, 1 in 5 people have some kind of mental health disorder. And I have no idea about statistics about addiction or suicide, but I think people feel like they're not touched by these things, when in actuality they probably are. They probably know someone in their circle who is battling addiction, who is fighting suicidal thoughts, or has some, mental health issue that they're not dealing with. And so it does impact everybody all the time. And just to be mindful, again, of like the language and just stigmatizing people, because you never know who's around you, when you're talking. I think, Orion, you had talked about how people would, discuss LGBTQ things around you, but not in the right way, and how that would make you feel. And that does make people feel awful. So just being mindful of speech, and that even though you don't know that you're around someone who may be impacted in these ways, you probably are. And also that none of these things are things that we choose for ourselves. I have mental health diagnoses. I am in recovery. And I've attempted to take my life on several occasions. But like, here I am, and a lot of people in my life today that come in new wouldn't know that about me. But those aren't things that I chose for myself. Those, it's just things that I've had to deal with in my life, that I wouldn't even say overcome, but that I've learned how to deal with in my everyday life.
What I wish personally people knew about mental health, addiction, and suicide is that these struggles are very much real. When I was growing up, I tried to talk with my parents about this. My mom was a little more in the understanding boat because she had her own struggles. But my father, even though he does have those struggles, and he's always had those struggles, at that time came from that mentality that, you're weak. You just gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps and move forward. And only recently he started to deal with it himself, with anxiety and depression. He's got diabetes. He has a lot of health issues. And he's starting to really look at it and go, I had them, his mother had them, and really address like how those have affected his life in general. And just today we were talking about this, and he's like, oh, well, I can't really complain. Other people have it harder than I do. And I said, no, you're allowed to complain. You are allowed to have feelings. I quoted Frozen 2. I said, those feelings are real. Those feelings are feels or whatever. And those feelings are real. And he was like, wow, you should make that a song. I was like, already done. It's Frozen 2. But, hearing him discuss his struggles now, understand what I was going through, it's really had some really good, like, raw discussion between us. But I think I don't want everyone to have to feel that, to have that sympathy and have that empathy with other people. It was touched on that, people are around, we know people who are affected by these problems, whether it's us or not. And just to know that it is very close to home, kind of that seven steps to Kevin Bacon thing, it is like one step. It is almost a 100% one step away, no matter who you are.
Thank you all so much. I just want to throw out there that for me, the one thing I wish people knew about mental health, addiction, and suicide is that it's okay to talk about it. So this week we've been having some different programs in honor of National Suicide Prevention Week. And it's okay to talk about these things. And really, we should be talking about these things. So that's kind of something that's really important to me. And I'm very thankful that all of you agreed to be on this panel. I do want to open it up to the audience. I know there's a couple people on. If there are any questions that you have, You can either put that in the chat box or you can unmute yourself and ask them out loud. If anyone has any questions, now's a good time for that. Okay, well, if no one has any questions, I will let the panelists wrap up if they'd like. Any last words of wisdom you'd like to impart on us? This was a recorded program, so I will be posting that on our social media and sharing it with individuals if you would like to share that with others that you know of who you may think this would be helpful for them as well. So any last words of wisdom, panelists?
I just have just a reminder to the veteran community, there's always somebody out there that's going to help you. Don't let pride or ego or anything get in your way. Reach out to another veteran, reach out to as close a friend you can. Somebody will listen. Mental health is a big deal, and PTSD and TBI. Just want you to know that there's always people here for you. Don't ever give up.
Any other last thoughts from our panelists?
Thank you for hosting this. It was a great conversation. And I know that if we would have been all able to meet in person, this would have been very well attended. These events very normally are.
Yeah, I'll just second what he said and just thank you for having me on the panel. I feel honored just to be a part of this, and like just building off what James said, there's always support out there. I'm a certified addiction peer recovery coach, and so there are more and more things emerging every day to help support people as the understanding about addiction I guess becomes more prevalent. Like people are looking at it as it should be now and starting to provide the supports that are really beneficial to those who want to enter into recovery and be successful in that. So just don't, lose hope. If you desire help, seek it and you'll find it.
All right, well, thank you so much to our panelists. I have put in the chat box a really quick short questionnaire. If you wouldn't mind participants completing that survey, the link is there. I will be posting this recorded webinar tomorrow on our social media. I'll be sure to tag all of our panelists in it. And it will also include some additional information about the different organizations each of the panelists represent. So Project Me, Warrior Breed, Purdue Extension, and also Safe Huntington. So feel free to check that out tomorrow. And I'm so thankful that you all were able to attend with us. And that's all I have for you. So the survey's in the chat box. I'll leave it up for a couple minutes so you can grab that. But otherwise, thank you all so much for participating in today's conversation.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.